Okay. So to be respectful of everyone's time, I'm going to go ahead and start. We'll start with our introductions. My name is Carrie Pecoraro. I am the Special Ed Department Chair here at Edison High School. And we are here to do a parent university. The focus really is for our high school parents looking out at our students as they're 18 and graduating, looking at those services, what's available to them, and starting to put kind of a face to the names and the services that Mr. Wise, our ETR, is always helping our parents with. I am going to go ahead and present, and then we have everyone's name on there. If we can introduce ourselves going down the list. Let me share my screen. Okay. So today we're going to talk about transition from high school. We're going to talk about some of that post-high schools, the supports. Our ETR is going to talk. Mr. Wise, we're going to talk about a little bit of those vocational assessments. We're going to step very briefly into POLI, STEP, and PACE, which is for our students who are 18. And then we have our a representative from the ARC of Northern Virginia and from the Virginia Association of the Community Rehabilitation, otherwise known as SSI. No, not correct? Access?
No, Virginia Access.
Virginia Access. Oh, I don't know. I have an association. Oh, I'm sorry. And I have it here.
That's okay.
Correct. Almost correct. Thank you. I'll change that on the presentation before I send it out.
No worries. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it.
So we'll start with introductions, and if we can go down the list.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Deborah Guillen. I am the Director of Student Services at Edison, but I also supervise our low incidence program for our students with intellectual disabilities. So just thank you all for being here. We've got a great program put together tonight, and we hope you find the information to be valuable.
I've already introduced myself, but I'll do it quickly again. I'm Carrie Pecoraro. I'm the Special Education Department Chair, also the Low Incidence Program. Thank you again for joining us. If you've missed something or if you have to leave early, I am going to be recording this and sending it out to all of our parents. So I do understand that things can happen, but I want to thank you all for taking time to join us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen Wise. I'm the ETR at Edison High School.
Good evening, everyone. I'm David Lojkovic. I work in Central Office, the Office of Special Education Instruction. I'm a specialist in adapted curriculum, and I support my wonderful colleagues at Edison High School.
And I'm Diane Monig. I'm the Transition Manager with the ARC of Northern Virginia.
And I am Marilyn Morrison. I'm the Community Work Incentives Coordinator, part of the WIPA program with Virginia Access.
Okay, so again, Stephen Wise, I'm the Employment and Transition Representative. Please feel free to jot down my email address. I'm more than happy to answer questions as they come up, even over the summer, that's fine. My role as an ETR is to work with parents to make connections to all of the various adult service agencies, the Community Services Board, DARS, which is the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services. I can facilitate the SSI process. SSI is Supplemental Security Income, and Ms. Monig is going to or I guess Ms. Morrison is going to talk a little bit more about that. I can help apply for Medicaid, guardianship, and special needs trusts. I can make connections for those as well, and I believe Ms. Monig is going to address those issues tonight. Other things that I do at Edison are to develop transition plans. I work closely with case managers, students, and parents to develop transition plans. And I also develop community work experience sites for vocational training. And I give instruction to students on self-advocacy and other issues. So let's talk for just a minute about what happens after high school. As you probably know, students with an IEP can remain in public school through the year in which they turn 22. At that point, some of our students will access services through DARS. Those include job training, job searches, job fairs, and job coaching. They're a wonderful organization and very helpful. Other students will access services through the Community Services Board. The CSB will work with students to connect them to adult service providers who have day support programs, and those programs provide social activities as well as vocational and life skills training. And they also present students with job opportunities as well. A couple other things that I wanted to make sure that people were aware of. Adults with disabilities in Fairfax County can apply for door-to-door transportation through Metro Access and another group known as FastTran. And another thing to bear in mind is that adults with disabilities have access to social clubs and outings groups that are sponsored by the Fairfax County government. So there are plenty of resources in our county. And again, my role is to make the connections between parents and the various agencies and groups that can facilitate a successful transition. I don't have all the answers, but I have access to people who do, and I'm here as a resource for you. So please feel free to contact me at any time.
So our main focus today is to talk about what happens after our students turn 22, but I do want to kind of go over some of the opportunities for our students who are 18 to 22. As we're looking at those, as our students are getting ready to access their community more and more, Fairfax County has quite a few programs. One of our programs that's actually in Edison is PACE, that's Pathways to Accessing Community Environments, for students who are still working towards getting ready for PULI, but who are focusing on those life skills. So it's a program that focuses strongly on life, social skills, and vocational skills, which is embedded throughout the day. The students will be participating in jobs around the school as well as classroom-based work tasks, with an emphasis on expanding the work skills, focus, and endurance and independence. We will also be working on functional life skills, including hygiene, leisure skills, and cooking. So it's just one of the smaller, one of the programs for like kind of that in-between time before our students turn 22. We also have the PULI Career Center for our students who graduate high school. There's an application process, and this has a very strong emphasis on expanding career skills and independent living skills. The instruction is primarily in the community work sites, and the students learn the benefit of a job coach, learn with the benefit of a job coach who's present. Another program that Fairfax County has is called the STEP program. It's located at the Mount Vernon High School. The STEP program provides students who have aged between 18 and 22 with employment training in real work settings. In addition to learning work skills, they receive instructions in applied academics, self-advocacy, and independent living skills. The STEP program is intended for students who are generally able to work independently with very little supervision. As you can see, there's kind of a continuum of support as we're getting our students ready to really be independent and be able to access those job and community settings. And as our students are working towards that, we, like Mr. Wise said, we want to make sure we're always helping you access and get to know those services that are available for your students after they're 22. And so with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Diane Monning from the ARC of Virginia to talk a little bit about those transition services. Would you like me to present or would you like to present?
If you can, that would be awesome. Thank you, Carrie.
Sure.
Hi. Okay. I'll wait to pull up the first slide. Okay. Well, thank you, Carrie, for inviting me here tonight. So I am going to actually kind of expand. Mr. Wise gave a fantastic presentation about what an ETR does and the services that he can help provide. And so I'm going to piggyback a little bit on his and just expand some of those. So if you could go to the next slide. For those of you who are not familiar with the ARC of Northern Virginia, we are the local chapter of a national organization. But basically, in a nutshell, what our mission is to help all individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities live a life like yours, to live a full, inclusive, and meaningful life in their communities. And so we do everything we can to help advocate for and support that. A lot of what we do at the ARC of Northern Virginia is help empower people with disabilities, their family members. So that's like giving you lots of information to help empower you to make decisions as you go forward in this very kind of confusing time. The ARC of Northern Virginia is affiliated with the ARC of Virginia and the ARC of the United States. And there's 23 ARCs in Virginia and 730 across the country. So if you were to leave this area and go to another area, you'll always find an ARC there. But every ARC is a little bit different. And our ARC is primarily an education and outreach ARC. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the services that we provide as we go through the presentation. But what we're going to focus on tonight is obviously transitioning from school to adult services. Next slide. And the reason this is such a kind of daunting task is once you leave the realm of special education, you leave services that you are entitled to, and you go to adult services where you have to be found eligible. So in special education, you are entitled to education and there's no waiting list. Once you transition to adult services, there's different eligibility criteria specific to each agency, and we're going to talk about some of those agencies. There's also limited funding available, and lots of services have waiting lists. And another kind of aspect that we're going to talk to tonight, as you're learning about all of these eligibility criteria and the funding available for each agency, it's really important to understand where all the funding comes from to pay for the adult services. So we'll talk more about that. Next slide. Okay, so what we've kind of narrowed down, we have kind of a top 10 to transition. So these are the things that are kind of the top things that you need to prepare for. And so the first one is to talk to your employment and transition representative, like Mr. Wise. He is chock full of information, and he can help you learn about different employment support organizations and service providers in the community. And next slide. The very top thing you want to do is contact the Community Services Board in Fairfax County if you have not done that yet. The number is there on the screen. And the reason you want to connect with them is so that you can apply for a Medicaid Developmental Disabilities Waiver. There are 3 developmental disabilities waivers: the Community Living Waiver, the Family and Individual Supports Waiver, and the Building Independence Waiver. Those 3 waivers provide different levels of support in the community. So the community living waiver is the most robust waiver service that provides group home kind of 24/7 support, whereas the building independence waiver provides the least amount of supports depending on your level of need. And those waivers stay with you for your lifetime. So as you go from transitioning out of school until you age, those are support services for your entire life. Now, the other reason it's good to be connected with the Community Services Board is that there is a waiting list for these waivers. And so while you're on the waiting list for a waiver, you may be provided with funds for employment support services and day support services through the Fairfax County Community Services Board. Those are local funds, general fund dollars that can be used to provide support services. There's a little bit of information there about the eligibility criteria. I won't go too into that, but they look at functional ability, diagnosis, and financial situation. And one of the assessment to measure the functional ability is the VIDES assessment. And that's an assessment that you can find on the ARC of Northern Virginia's website to help you prepare for the intake and assessment before you go. A good reason, even though you are waiting for a waiver, one good thing about being on the waiting list for a waiver is that once a year you can apply for IFSP funds. That's Individual and Family Service Program. And you are eligible for up to $1,000 a year on that for that program to be used for anything like a camp, a respite, assistive technology, a variety of things. And one other thing, that if your child has, although there's waiting lists for the long-term developmental disabilities waiver, you may be eligible for the CCC Plus waiver. There is no waiting list for that waiver. In order to apply for that, you contact the Fairfax County Department of Social Services, and that number is there on the slide. For that waiver, you need to have a nursing need, some kind of medical need. Next slide. The other agency that you want to contact during this transition time is the Department of the Aging and Rehabilitative Services, also called DARS. And this is a federal state program. And I have the Fairfax phone number there for that office. While you're in school, you can access, and this is relatively new within the last couple of years, our pre-ETS, Employment and Transition Services. These are services that are available to all students while they're still in school, and there's no waiting list for these services. Pre-ETS provides things like job shadowing, job exploration, social skills groups, communication skills, helping students kind of develop those soft skills as they transition to a professional kind of employment environment. Once you graduate from school or in the midst of transitioning out of school and you're looking for an integrated competitive job in the community, they provide kind of short-term services. So helping you write your resume, helping you go on job interviews, job development, job searches, and then they'll do that initial training once you find a job. But for these services, you have to apply and be found eligible. Another program as part of DARS is the Woodrow Wilson Workforce Center, and they are a campus in Fishersville, Virginia, and they provide a variety of different services. They do vocational evaluations, life skills training. They do have a great driver's education program, but they also have certificate programs. So like in culinary skills and cosmetology and materials handling, things like that if you are going for a specific kind of training opportunity. And one other thing to note, we're going to talk a little bit more about employment service organizations. You're going to hear that a lot, or adult service providers. DARS and the CSB both contract with all of these employment service organizations to provide these employment and day support services. One of the resources we have, and we're going to go into it a little bit at the end, is a transition points guide where you can see all of the different employment service providers in our area that are accessible to you. Next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the other, number 4 is apply for, can you go back one? Apply for supplemental security income. This is, I just want you to know, is one of the most important things you need to do, but I'm not going to spend any time here because Marilyn Morrison is going to talk more about that. The only plug I will add as a resource for the ARC of Northern Virginia, Marilyn has done numerous workshops for us on supplemental security income, and those are archived on our YouTube channel because Marilyn can talk about Social Security for many hours, and so we have really great webinars that she's done for us that you can access on our YouTube channel. Next slide. Now, as part of, Marilyn will talk more about this, but when you apply for Social Security or supplemental security income, one of the things that's important to know is that you can only have, your child can not have more than $2,000 in their bank account. And that goes for also being eligible to be for a Medicaid waiver as well. So if your child has more than $2,000 in their bank account, that would disqualify them from receiving public benefits. So as part of your overall estate planning, you want to put any money that for your child into what's called a special needs trust. And a special needs trust you can open up at with a bank, with an attorney, or at the ARC of Northern Virginia, we operate a pooled trust program. What that means is that everyone's money is pooled together for investment purposes, but you have your own account within that big trust program. There's 2 types of trusts, a family-funded trust and a self-funded trust. So what most families do is open up a family-funded trust, and then they just leave it sit there until there's money to put into it, whether it's from a life insurance policy or an inheritance or any other monies that you want to leave your child to be used for their enhancement, their quality of life. The other trust is a self-funded trust, and a self-funded trust is funded with funds that come directly to the individual, like if they received a settlement from a car accident or something like that. Funds from a special needs trust can pay for any life-enhancing expenditure, so education, a computer, a phone, anything at all. And I have our website there, so you can learn more about it through our website. We also offer Trust Talk Tuesdays, which if you want to learn more about, they're just small group. Everything, of course, is virtual now. So every other Tuesday, we do Zoom meetings where you can learn more about it. You just sign up for it on our website. Next slide. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about ABLE accounts. Most of you have probably heard about ABLE accounts. We encourage families to, in addition to, you always want to have a special needs trust as part of your overall estate planning. But an ABLE account is kind of another tool in your financial toolbox as you plan for the future. So ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience Act of 2014. And it's set up just like a college 529 savings account. The ABLE program in Virginia is called ABLE Now, and everything is done strictly online, and the website is there. It's ablenow.com. So ABLE accounts can be used, or money from an ABLE account can be used to spend money on qualified disability expenses. So those are things that are related to your disability. So maybe a companion to help your child, or an assistant to go maybe on a vacation or on outings, or training or education, those kinds of things. You can put up to $15,000 per year into an ABLE account, and it's not considered against as income for SSI purposes. And the fees are they're there. And to understand a little bit more about special needs trusts versus an ABLE account, is we have a really nice kind of chart, and the link is there to compare side by side the differences between a special needs trust and an ABLE account. Next slide. Another thing you want to think about at this transition time is exploring supported decision making and different legal authority options. We at the ARC of Northern Virginia get calls on a daily basis saying, my child's turning 18 and right away I need to apply for guardianship because so-and-so told me I need to apply for guardianship. Guardianship may be what you need, but it's not always. It's not kind of a one size fits all, and it's definitely not needed in every circumstance. So it's always important to look at the different layers of support that your child would need. So the first kind of least restrictive option is supported decision making. And this past year at the ARC, we've done a lot of work around supported decision making, and we have a lot of videos and written information that's available on our website. Supported decision making basically means that you utilize natural supports. Everybody needs help making decisions. When I need to get my car fixed, I know nothing about cars. And so I take my husband with me who knows more about cars than I do and can help me make good decisions. Or if I was purchasing a second home, I might take a friend with me who knows about purchasing a home and funding a home, that kind of thing. Asking other people to kind of help me make decisions to make the best decisions. And all of that means is figuring out what people can help me make those decisions. And you can couple that with powers of attorney. What's most important when you're turning 18 is to maybe explore getting an education power of attorney, because that's something as soon as your child turns 18, if you want to be involved in, still have participate in IEP meetings and talk to the teachers, it's good to have an education power of attorney. And you can just download that from the FCPS actually has one on their website that you can download. Another thing at the age of 18 you want to consider is a medical power of attorney. And powers of attorney can all be customized. And you can either go to an attorney to do one that's a few $100s, or you can create your own. There's lots of different websites where you can just download a template and create your own. The Disability Law Center of Virginia has downloadable templates as well. The next kind of layer in looking at legal authority is limited guardianship, and then finally full guardianship. So limited guardianship means that you retain certain rights, like the right to vote or the right to drive. And then full guardianship is obviously all of those rights are, those are unavailable to you, like voting or driving. You can put in certain rights that you want to retain. Guardianship generally in this area costs anywhere from $1,600 to $3,000, depending on the attorney you go to. And the process usually takes 2 to 3 months, and it's done with an elder law attorney. The ARC of Northern Virginia has on our website, we have a provider directory that has attorneys that specialize in elder care law, if that is something you want resources for. Next page. And then you also want to explore transportation and travel training around this time. This is to apply for reduced fare for the bus and metro, and apply for Metro Access if that's something that you need, which is a door-to-door paratransit service. And you can download the application straight from the WMATA website. And the ECNV, the Independent Center of Northern Virginia, provides free travel training in our area. Next slide. Now, if your child is also interested in maybe not getting a job right after school, but maybe exploring some post-secondary options, these are some resources. And when I show you the resource at the end, we have a guide that has a lot of different resources in that that includes all of the stuff that's on the slide. There is a program called the MOST program, which is a 1-year transition program. It's located here in Fairfax County, and it is a 1-year program run by the Jewish Foundation Center for Group Homes. That's just kind of a unique 1-year transition program. But then if you're looking for more post-secondary options like community college, Northern Virginia Community College has a partnership with College Steps that helps provide mentoring and support while you're at NVCC. You might want to explore trade schools. ACET is an inclusive program at VCU. There's the George Mason Life Program, which is a program for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And George Mason also has the Mason Autism Support Initiative. And then, of course, if you're exploring a four-year college, contact the College Disability Services at that university. We just recently did, within the last couple of months, did 2 different post-secondary option workshops that did a lot of information on exploring and how to reach out to College Disability Services and other programs that are available across the country that provide supports for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I just included ones that are kind of local to our area. Next slide. As you transition out, you're losing that connection, that social connection you have with all your friends at school. So important to stay connected socially as you transition to the adult world. So these are just some links to different recreational and social programs in our area. Of course, Fairfax County Special Olympics, Best Buddies has programs. The Independent Center of Northern Virginia runs an adult social club. And then Spirit Club is a exercise and fitness and life skills kind of program. So there's lots of different programs in our area that young people can take advantage of to meet other people. Slide. And finally, advocate. All of you parents are always familiar with advocating. So of course you advocate for your child all the time. So I'm just going to talk about 2 different advocacy efforts that at the ARC of Northern Virginia, if you'd like to get more involved in that. We encourage you to advocate at both the local and the state level with us. Virginia is ranked 39th in the nation for providing funding for community supports. If you are interested in becoming involved with our advocacy efforts, you can reach out to Lucy Beednell at the ARC of Northern Virginia. She sends out information on action alerts and town halls and budget hearings, and she can provide more information on our website too about legislative priorities in Virginia and how to get more involved. We also organize a DD Advocacy Day every year where we go down to Richmond. This year it was all virtual, but effectively meet with legislators to kind of share stories and explain the needs that our families and individuals have. Next slide. And then also self-advocacy, so important to promote during this time. We have 2 self-advocacy groups at the ARC. People First for Young Adults, we meet the 2nd Tuesday of every month. That's a group that I facilitate. And then we have People First, A Life Like Yours Toastmasters, which meets the 3rd Thursday of every month. And that is an official Toastmasters group. So they work on developing public speeches, and they work on legislative kind of advocacy efforts. The next slide. And these are just some resources that I wanted to share with you. So these are all resources to help you as you kind of transition. We have, so our website is right there. From the front page, you can access our resource library, which has several one-page fact sheets on a variety of different topics. And then we also have a provider directory. So if you're looking for therapists, attorneys, camps, respite, a variety of different services, you can look in our provider directory. We have an information and referral portal that's available on the front page of our website. So any questions you have, you can just type in there and get a response. I encourage you to sign up for our resources e-newsletter to learn not just what we're doing at the ARC, but also across our Northern Virginia area. Transition Points guides, which I'm going to mention next, but every other week we do transition lunch and learns every other Wednesday. Those are small group just to kind of ask questions. We offer a transition series every fall, and it's held at Marymount University. That'll be coming up at the end of September and the end of October. I mentioned before we have Trust Talk Tuesdays. We also do First Friday. So the first Friday of the month, we do a workshop on future planning. We also have a YouTube channel, and that link is there. So we do lots of workshops and webinars throughout the year, and all the workshops that we do are archived and recorded on our YouTube channel. So you are always welcome to search out information on there. And then the next slide. And I think this is the last slide. This is our transition point. So our overarching program at the ARC is called Transition Points, which stands for Providing Opportunities, Information, Networking, and Transition Support. And these 3 guides, we've developed a guide for kind of each critical decision-making point across the lifespan. And these 3 guides are the ones that are most important during this time. So the yellow one is Securing a Future for Your Child, which is about transitioning from school to adult services. So everything we're talking about tonight is in that guide. The green one is Entering the World of Work, and that talks all about post-secondary options, employment supports, and meaningful day support services. And all of the resources and providers in our area are listed in there. And then finally, the orange one is Finding a Home for People with Disabilities, which talks about different ways to leverage funding supports and programs to kind of find a home for your child. So those are all resources that can be downloaded from our website, and they are available in 6 different languages. And the next slide. And that is it. So if anyone, I don't know if we're taking questions. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to take them. But I'll leave that to Carrie.
If everyone's okay, I'd like to do questions at the end so we can hear a little bit more about that SSI. And then if we have any questions, we'll open it up at the end for questions, basically. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything. The information was amazing. At this point, I'm going to ask that Marilyn Morrison present. Would you like me to present your presentation? Or would you like to present?
Sorry, I was on mute. I can go ahead and present if that would be okay. If there's a problem, I may defer back over to you.
No problem.
Today seems to be my day for except, you know what? I'm not even sure how to do it.
At the bottom, on the bottom right, you'll see a little X. If you open that up, like a little arrows, little purple arrows, bottom right, click on that.
Okay.
That opens up, you'll see a
Got it.
little participants, and then there's like a share content.
You know what? To make
You froze. Everyone can just hang in with us for 1 second. I think she froze and she can hop back on, but I will go ahead and present because I have a feeling that's what she was going to say to me.
I'm back.
Okay. Technology is working great for everyone.
Oh my gosh. Okay. There we go. I'm back.
Great. Would you like me to present?
Please present today. I'm
No
usually
problem.
very good with technology, but it is kicking me to the curb today. So what we'll do is we'll just skip some of those slides that we need to skip. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Today has been my technology day. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So my name is Marilyn Morrison, and I am the Community Work Incentives Coordinator for most of Virginia. We're part of the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance Project. We're on a cooperative grant with Social Security to provide benefits counseling and really a navigation point for folks that are in the Social Security disability system. So that also includes SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, Medicare, housing, food stamps, all of that. They all work together. So what I try to do and what we're tasked to do is to help people navigate through all of those programs, specifically what's going to happen when the beneficiary begins to work. That's always one of the primary questions that I get every day. What's going to happen to my child's benefits? I don't want to lose the Medicaid. He just got the waiver. He's earning income. And that's where I'm able to assist. I have a staff of 4, hoping to expand to 5 this summer. And we cover about 85% of the state. We also work with all of the schools in the area, as well as the state, local, as well as the employment service organizations in the area. I'm really proud of Virginia Access. We've had the grant for about 20 years now, so it's pretty exciting. We do provide information and direct assistance, assisting individuals who want to work and manage their benefits. And then we have a separate division on initial eligibility. I'm going to touch very briefly on initial eligibility tonight, but the important point here is that referrals are not needed in order to contact me. You can email me, you can text me, you can call me with questions, and I'm happy to help you navigate through the system. Next slide, please. So when you're talking about Social Security, the first thing that you want to do is, and I know everybody laughs at this, is you don't want to look for logic. I had a Social Security person tell me that a very long time ago. But you want to be very specific when you're speaking with Social Security. When you're calling the 1-800 number, you want to make sure to keep a record of the date, the name of the person you spoke with, what you asked, and what they told you. Make copies of all the documents you give to Social Security, both the forms you fill out and the evidence you want them to have in their possessions, and don't lose those copies because it's very possible Social Security will lose the copies. It's a paper-driven organization. You cannot send anything to Social Security in an email. You can't use attachments. You can either fax or mail. During COVID, and really not in the foreseeable future, Social Security offices are closed. They are seeing clients on a limited basis, but it's on an emergency needed basis. So things like initial eligibility, overpayments, income reporting, retirement applications, all of those pieces, you need to be going through either the Social Security website at ssa.gov, or you can call the 1-800 number. When you're calling the 1-800 number, you want to remember, don't call them at the last week of the month, and don't call them the first of the month. That's when everybody is getting their letters about either overpayments or shorting of benefits, or there's a benefit problem. The best time to call folks is call Social Security is always really in the middle of the month, and be very patient. Next slide, please. Make sure that you're promptly opening and reading all the mail that's sent by Social Security. When they give a deadline response date, that compliance is required, especially when you're talking about initial eligibility. Now, once you're found eligible, you can negotiate the time frames a little bit easier. But when you're looking at initial eligibility, they have a set time frame that from start to finish that they have to complete the application process. So they really are not looking for delays. Don't lose any of the paperwork again. And remember that you do need to report pay stubs every month to Social Security, and that's the beneficiary if you are working. Next slide, please. And remember, when a major life change occurs, address, marriage, employment, loss of job, divorce, you must report that to Social Security immediately. What I always recommend is go through the 1-800 number and then the local field office if you can. If not, call the 1-800 number twice just to make sure they have the information. If there's a change of address, Social Security does not forward information. Also, the mail is a little crazy right now. We all know that. So I have had lots of instances right now where folks are getting letters that are dated one date, but maybe the deadline is 3 weeks earlier. Make sure that you're keeping that envelope. So if there is any of those instances, you can go back and let Social Security know that there's a little bit of a time issue here. You can't go back in time. But make sure that you are keeping those copies. Next slide, please. I'm going to give you the definition of disability because a lot of people get hung up on some other information. But this is the definition of adult disability. Basically, what this says is that a person not only has to show medical evidence, but you have to show the inability to engage in substantial gainful activity. And what that means is basically, what is it going to take for the individual to go out and get a job and earn $1,310 gross a month? That's just this arbitrary number that Social Security has set up. Again, there's no logic to it. That substantial gainful activity number does increase yearly. But it's not only the medical evidence that Social Security is looking at, but they're looking at, can the individual go out, get a job just without support? No travel, no transportation issues, no job coaching, case management, no accommodations, no adaptations, nothing. Everything is great. So when you're looking at that application, you want to always think about that. Next slide, please. Prior to the age of 18, this is the definition of disability for Social Security disability benefits, both SSI, and SSI. And they're looking at developmental milestones. So prior to the age of 18, Social Security looks at developmental milestones. After the age of 18, Social Security looks at a person's ability to work and earn income. Next slide, please. So when you're going through your application, what you're going to start is you're going to register. You're going to make sure that the beneficiary or who your student, your child, has a MySSA account on SSA.gov. That's really important. In fact, everyone, no matter who they are, if you have a Social Security number, you should have a MySSA account on SSA.gov. Social Security is not sending out statements any longer. They're not sending out those retirement statements. Eventually, they will be going paperless, and they are encouraging folks to use the MySSA account to track anything. The best way to apply right now is to apply online or to call the 1-800 number. The date of application is the date of eligibility. When you apply, you're applying for adult disability. So you're not applying for just SSI or SSDI. That's not up to you to make that decision. It's really up to Social Security. So in the application, it's going to ask you, did you also want to apply for SSI? The answer is always yes, because they're going to put you where the individual is going to best fit, either SSI or SSDI. And I'm going to talk a lot about SSI tonight, not so much about SSDI. The paperwork will be mailed. It's required to be completed. And then you do need to return that within a specific time frame. And remember, copy, 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 make copies of everything. There will be an interview that will take place. Right now, that's being taken place either through Zoom or over the phone. You cannot pre-apply, so the best time to apply for benefits is always the month after the person turns 18. If you apply prior to the age of 18, they're going to apply childhood disability rules, and in that case, they're also looking at the parent's income. The month they turn 18, they don't prorate the benefit, and the date that you are applying is the date of eligibility. So the month after the person turns 18 is always the best time to apply. You can start the application online, and you can keep that application open for 30 days before you push the send button. So you can stop and start that application process. It just stays as an ongoing doc in the system until you push apply. Next slide, please. At that point, Social Security, once you've made that application, Social Security will send the disability report form to DDS, and that's where they're going to gather medical history information. They're also going to look at work history, when the disability began, what the treatment has been given. They're also going to look at any other information that you are giving to Social Security. They're also going to do, you're going to get a form that's called the Activities of Daily Living form. And that's the form where they want to know, how does a day go? Is the student able to cook? Are they able to dress themselves? Are they able to drive? Are they able to use public transportation? There's a lot of ins and outs and a lot of things that you need to finesse with that application. And I'm happy to talk to anyone offline about some of the ins and outs that you do want to think about when you're looking at the application. You not only want to look at the medical information, but you do want to look at that person's ability to earn income and what is it going to take. If there's behaviors, you really want to look at all of those pieces. And again, anyone that wants more information can certainly give me a call, and I'm happy to walk you through more of the intricacies and verbiage and finessing that you might want to use. Next slide, please. Once the application has gone to DDS, they may request on behalf of Social Security a medical exam. If there's not enough medical evidence, they will send you to a physician. Social Security will pay for the exam by a physician that's chosen by Social Security. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just a physician that they need to get more information. This is where the MySSA account really becomes useful, because you can track where the application is while it's going through the process. If you have that MySSA account, you'll see that it's at DDS. In some cases, it might give you the name of the individual or who to call. Maybe you need to give them more information. Determination is sent back to Social Security in 60 days. Right now, it's anywhere from 90 to 120 days. There's no way around it. We're just starting to kind of come back from the pandemic. Things are taking much longer than they would. Once the person is found eligible, though, you do get a back payment back to the original date of eligibility. So, depending on how long it takes, there could be a large back payment. If you're found eligible for benefits, awesome. If there's a denial, you can apply for reconsideration. If there's a denial at reconsideration stage, the next step is to appeal, and this is where you go through the administrative law judge. I will say this, there is this fallacy out there that all Social Security disability claims are denied. It's just the way it is. Everybody get used to it. That is not true. There is no edict anywhere within Social Security that says that there is automatic denial of benefit. But it really depends on how that application is what information is given on that application. So it's really important to look at a person as the whole individual. You want to be very specific in the information that you're giving to Social Security. You never want to use broad terms. You don't want to use generalities. You want to be very specific. Also, make sure that you are giving them all of the information they're looking for. Make sure that you've given them all of doctors' names and phone numbers. You want to track all of that with your physician. Make sure that you're letting your physician know what you're doing, and that they may get a request for medical records from Social Security. That way you are really following it through. You don't want that request to sit on an administrator's desk if the physician is out of the office. For instance, I found out the other day that one of my doctors is still practicing, but he sold his practice. So everything had changed in his office. So you want to make sure that you are pushing that information through. Next slide, please. So let's talk about SSI and what SSI is. SSI is the cash benefit that's paid to individuals who meet medical, disability, and financial needs criteria. It is financially based. It's means tested. The maximum amount of benefit that a person can get in 2021 is $794. That's the max. There's no more. It's no more. It is directly associated with Medicaid. There is a resource limit of $2,000, as Diane had mentioned in her presentation. So you really want to be very careful and make sure that all of your resources are managed before you make the application. If you have over $2,000 when that application is submitted to Social Security, it can be an automatic denial, or it can be a back payment. It can be an overpayment situation, and you don't want that to happen. So I really do encourage everyone to set up any of those trust instruments that Diane talked about. Next slide, please. When we're looking at prior to the age of 18, I mentioned that Social Security does look at the parent's income. This is called parent-to-child deeming, and that means that they look at a portion of the parent's income as considered to be available to the SSI child. This is prior to the age of 18. So that could reduce the amount of the student's maximum SSI check, or it could mean that they're not eligible at all based on parents' income. Next slide, please. Over the age of 18, a person is considered to be an adult. And at that point, the student is looked at as living in the household of another. They're only going to look at the student's income. They only look at students' resources. So when you're looking at the SSI for adult disability, Social Security, first of all, SSI is for food and shelter. So really what you want to think about is, I'm sorry, let me back up. When you're making that base application for Social Security is going to ask a very simple question. Does the individual pay rent? Now, it doesn't matter if the individual is living with the parent, with the grandparent, with a family member. It doesn't matter. As far as Social Security is concerned, they're living in the household of another, and they must be paying their fair share of room and board or food and shelter. If they're not paying their fair share, Social Security will reduce the SSI cash benefit by 1/3, and instead of $794, the individual will receive about $560. That can be changed. So it doesn't mean that it's set in stone. So if when you make that initial application, a living arrangement is not yet set, you don't really want to charge rent, that's okay. You can go back and change that. But when you start out, Social Security will ask a very simple question. They're going to ask, does he pay rent? If the answer is nope, doesn't pay rent, he lives with us, absolutely not, then the SSI cash benefit will be reduced by 1/3. If you do say, yes, absolutely, he's paying rent. In this area, I always recommend saying anywhere between $450 and $500 a month. If the answer is, oh, yes, absolutely, he's paying $500 a month, the next question will be from Social Security, is this the same amount you would charge anyone off the street if you rented a room? The answer should be the same. If you say, oh, heck no, do you know what rents go for in this area? I would charge so much more. You're going to be losing 1/3 of the federal benefit amount. So you want to be very careful about that you are charging the same amount that you would anyone off the street, even if you're not renting a room to anyone off the street. I do have a sample lease that I'm happy to share with anyone, but it's always an important point that we move through when we're looking at that piece. SSI is for food and shelter first. If the student is not paying his or her fair share of room and board, then the SSI will be reduced. Next slide, please. And I will say there are always lots of questions about that particular point. Now, Diane did talk about a little bit about the resources. Social Security looks at resources. It's countable and not countable. What is countable possibly by Social Security is any cash, savings account, stocks, bonds, CDs, IRAs, land owned but not lived on, anything owned that's converted to cash, resources of a spouse or resources of a parent if the beneficiary is under the age of 18. They look at a combination of accounts. Once you're found eligible for SSI, those basic accounts cannot ever move over $2,000. I take that back. They can be over $2,000 in the middle of the month, but on the last day of the month at 11:59 and 59 seconds, you cannot have over $2,000 in resources moving into the next month, because at that point you can be considered over-resourced and you could very possibly lose your eligibility, or at the very least you're going to be charged an overpayment of the full amount of SSI. So even if you're $5 over that resource limit of $2,000, you're not eligible for the full amount of SSI, which is that $794. So you really want to watch that very carefully. You know, again, I can't stress enough to either look at the special needs trust instruments that are available and the ABLE accounts, because it's a great way to move money over into those accounts. Next slide, please. I've given you some resources that are excluded. You know, I've noted that there's a special needs trust, property in a specific trust, and the ABLE account, special needs or other exclusionary accounts. You can have a house, you can have clothing, you can have a burial space. Retroactive SSI or SSDI, you do have up to 9 months to spend. Also, if you have students that received the stimulus payments, I had a question about this today, you have 12 months to spend the stimulus payment down before they're looked at as income and resources. Next slide, please. With SSI, you have automatic eligibility to Medicaid. This is really an important point. A lot of people say, well, we don't really need the money. You will need the Medicaid. The Medicaid is really the most important point with that SSI. The money is always nice, but that Medicaid eligibility is something that I know everyone really cherishes. There is automatic eligibility to Medicaid. You're not automatically enrolled. You still have to enroll, but there is automatic eligibility to Medicaid. Next slide, please. I'm going to skip over waivers, so let's just, Diane covered waivers really well, so let's just skip over that. Okay, so go back, one more. So let's look at what happens when a person starts working and they're receiving SSI. SSI is a month-to-month benefit, so you do have to report wages every month to Social Security. There are a number of different ways you can do this. You can either do it through, there is a reporting app you can use. There's a wage reporting phone number. You can do it through that MySSA account. You can call Social Security. You can mail your pay stubs. But you do have to report monthly to Social Security. For every $2 that a person earns, you're going to lose $1 of your SSI. You always have more in your pocket by working. I have lots of calculation sheets that I show folks. For example, if a person earns $1,000 a month, they're going to lose about $450 of their SSI. So they're still going to be eligible for almost $400 of SSI, and they'll have a wage of $1,000 a month. But you do need to report that monthly. SSI is a month-to-month benefit. if you do fall back on reporting, then you are risking issues with overpayments, and you don't want that to happen. And there are no earnings limits. So with SSI, there are no earnings limits, which is very nice. There is a part where there is of course, you'll hit a break even, where at some point you're not eligible for the SSI, but that's okay. You're still going to stay on the rolls. You're just not going to be eligible for the cash payment. You go into non-payment status, and if for any reason at any time your wages drop, the SSI will just come back. Next slide, please. There are a number of work incentives. I'm really only going to talk about 2 of these tonight, but Social Security has what I call leveling of the playing field. They have work incentives that assist with really helping individuals keep more of their SSI, and as I said, leveling that playing field. So next slide, please. There is something called impairment-related work expenses. This is anything that person needs, supports the disability, and enables them to work. So I've given you some examples here of attendant care services, transportation, if there's paratransit, if they're using Metro Access, maybe they're paying the college kid down the street to take them back and forth, Uber, they're using Lyft, anything that the individual might be using in lieu of public transportation if public transportation is not available or it's just not an option. Medical devices, medications, copays, residential modifications. There's a very long list of these that are available. Social Security uses these almost like a tax deduction. So with that same $1,000 that the individual might have earned monthly, maybe $100 of that is spent on transportation. Instead of $100 affecting the SSI benefit, it really comes down to then only $900 affect the benefit. And that really lets that individual keep more of the SSI. Next slide, please. Student earned income exclusion. This is a really big one for folks. If the individual is in if they're regularly attending school, or if they're in a qualified training program, then they in fact can keep, they have exclusions for income. In 2021, those exclusions are $1,930 gross a month up to $7,770 a year. So what that means is that even though the individual might be working, as long as they are either regularly attending school or they are in a qualified training program, up to $7,770 gross a year is excluded from that calculation that I talked about. And you're going to keep most of your SSI during that time, even though you are working. And that's prior to the age of 22. Next slide, please. I'm going to skip the plan for Chief Self-Support this time around. Let's talk about the continuation of Medicaid. With Social Security, again, I talked about, with SSI, again, I talked about the Medicaid eligibility. At some point, if a person starts earning income, they could hit what's called the break-even point. At that point, they're not eligible for a cash benefit. If that happens, Social Security has put into place something called a continuation of Medicaid, and that's called 1619B. And all that does is let the individual maintain their Medicaid eligibility, earning up to about $35,000. So a person can remain eligible for SSI, their Medicaid will stay intact. As long as they don't have more than $2,000 in resources, their Medicaid will stay with them and they could earn almost $35,000. This is a Social Security work incentive. This is not a state work incentive. This is not something you go through DSS or DFS for. It goes directly through Social Security for this one. Next slide, please. There's also, we've all heard about SSDI. So there's also Title II SSDI. This is a cash benefit that's paid from individuals who have worked and paid into FICA. So basically a way to become eligible for SSDI is that you pay into the system, you know, you have enough work quarters, and now you're eligible, and it's based on the amount that you've paid into the system. The other way that an individual becomes eligible for SSDI is that the disability is diagnosed prior to the age of 22. And at that point, they are found to be a childhood disability beneficiary. It's called a CDB. And we're going to talk a little bit about a CDB in a second. With SSDI, automatically becomes Medicare. So Medicare is associated with those SSDI benefits. Next slide, please. So let's talk about CDB benefits, because I always think this is really important for parents to know, because for planning for future benefits, planning, you know, for the future, you need to know what's going to be involved. So a CDB is the monthly cash benefit to the child that's based on the Social Security earnings record of the parent of the adult child. So if you're applying for eligibility at 18, of course, they're going to be found disabled prior to the age of 22. And they're going to also have that designation as a CDB, or a childhood disability beneficiary. At that point, when a parent opens their work history with Social Security, either through death, disability, or retirement. So once that record is open with Social Security, the child is entitled to 1/2 of the parent's retirement earnings, whichever parent is receiving the most. So it can be quite a bit. When the parent is deceased, the entitled child gets 3/4 of what the parent would have received. And this is throughout the lifetime. So that means that if the child is, you know, 35, 40, it doesn't matter, as long as the individual is still eligible for SSI at that point, or even it doesn't have to be SSI. They can be eligible for SSDI on their own work history. When the parent opens their work history, the child will receive approximately 1/2. And then when at the time of when the parent is deceased, they're going to receive about 3/4 of what the parent would have received. I always like to explain that to parents, just for future planning. If waiver is in your future, there is an entire separate training on waiver and working rules for waiver. Waiver has very specific working rules, so you want to be really aware of what that CD benefit is going to be, because it can have impact. Next slide, please. I know that Diane mentioned the Able Now accounts. I've just given you a little bit more information about that. Again, it does not affect eligibility for Medicaid, or with some limitations, SSI and other benefits. It's completely excluded. And in some cases, the money in Able accounts are not taxable, and there are some restrictions there. Next slide, please. This is just more nuts and bolts. I know Diane talked about all this, so we're going to skip over that this time. And I've given you, she mentioned qualified expenses. This is a list of qualified expenses. These are, I've given you some rules to think about when you're looking to avoid overpayment situations. Before you're looking at employment, get a benefit analysis. That's what I do. I do that. I put together the benefits analysis, and I look at the whole person. I look at all of the benefits that they're receiving, and I also look at what there might be eligibility for that maybe they're not receiving or may not be aware of. Make sure that you are submitting those pay stubs and those the impairment-related work receipts and work expenses receipts, and remember that there is that resource limit. And then you can also notify me at any time when you receive Social Security notifications. If you're not quite sure what they're saying, I speak Social Security. And also, you're welcome to call me or email me at any time to really discuss more about some of the points that I talked about this evening. The application process can be a little bit confusing. I'm always happy to help people navigate through those systems. I'm happy to offer resources. I'm affiliated with most of the organizations in this area, so I can always give you referrals and resources for a number of different pieces. And remember, I don't need a referral in order for you to call me. Next slide, please. And thank you. I've given you all of my information, and I guess we're going to take questions. So I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for their presentations. First of all, thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you to our presenters. If you want to stay on and ask questions, I would like to invite you to, but I also understand that a lot of information was thrown at our families. So if you feel like you need to follow up with with our presenters, or if you have a question, you can reach out to myself, Mr. Wise, and we can help connect you with them. All of this information will also be sent out on the same email blast that I typically use. So I'm going to include the presentations that were provided, including the recording. But I do want to give everybody the opportunity to stay if you want to stay for a few minutes and ask your questions. Okay? And you can just raise your hand and we'll do that. But again, I want to thank everybody for tonight.
Thank you, Diane and Marilyn, for a wealth of information. That was wonderful.
Yes.
I know it was a lot to take in, so my email address is on the presentation. So I really feel free, just like Marilyn, feel free to contact me anytime. I'm happy to answer any question, try to help.
Thank you so much.
I agree. I'm open at any time to discuss it. It's a lot of information, and there's a lot of steps to take. So, you know, as Diana and I both say, we're more than happy to help you at any time, to speak to you, to talk you off the ledge.
And to our families who are here, we are looking to do a little bit more in depth with each of these representatives over the next year. So we're each, I'm looking to do more of that reach out and have it be more targeted. So, you know, having Marilyn come back and just spend the time talking about SSI and being, you know, having Dan come out and talking more about transition and helping with that, and having other representatives come out over next year. So I know a lot of those who are here tonight are going to be families who are returning next year. So there will be more time to kind of get into this as we're moving forward. I see some chat bubbles.
There was just a question about the presentation, and I already answered it.
Perfect.
If there aren't any other questions, thank you all for being here tonight. I know a couple of people have hopped off already. There's nothing further with the presentation, so you can feel free to hop off. But I just also wanted to thank everyone, our presenters certainly, and our parents who joined us this evening. There's a lot of really great, helpful information for our families, so I do appreciate everyone's time and our parents taking time out of an evening. I know it's always hard at the end of a long day to then get back on the computer to listen to something else, but we appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight.
Thank you. You too. If someone's asking questions, I'm going to stop recording.